Hi, I'm Carl Taylor from visualeducation.com, and this is actually my own motorcycle. And I'm going to photograph it now to show you an excellent new feature that's just been released, a firmware update for the Hasselblad X2D that now adds multi-shot function to the X2D. So it can convert that camera from a 100 megapixel into a 400 megapixel resolution file. So I'm going to show you the files and compare them. But not only that, the 4-shot multi-shot version actually increases clarity and sharpness of the standard 100 megapixel image by moving those RGB pixels around, and I'll explain a little bit about that for you as well. So I've got a still life set up here ready to shoot, and this multi-shot feature works best, of course, with a still life when your camera is locked down, your subject is locked down. That's the most relevant way to use multi-shot. Now, I'll just take the shot in standard mode. First of all, we're going to look at the focus. So I'm going to go into live view, and I've pre-focused manually at this little detail at the top of the forks here, the right fork. There's this very fine grooving line in here that I'm using as my focus point. So this is my focus point here. So let's just remember that. Let's come out of live view. So I've already pre-focused. I'm going to take a standard shot in single shot view. So it's just how you would take a normal shot of this setup. That's the lighting that I've got on the scene. It doesn't have to be anything amazing. It's just there as for us to use as a reference. Now, if I zoom in on this 100 megapixel image to 100%, you can see the sort of detail that we're achieving there. In particular, I'm looking at the detail we're getting on those lines and on the texture there at the top of the forks as well. Now, that's at 100%. If we go into 200%, you can still see those lines in there, and you can see that wonderful texture on the top of the metalwork at the top of the forks there. Now, this is incredible detail already from the Hasselblad X2D. I've got the 90mm lens. This is a standard 100 megapixel file on that medium format sensor. Now look what happens when I do this. So I'm going to change the shooting mode. By the way, this is just a firmware update to the camera. That's all that's needed, is a firmware update to the camera and the latest version of Hasselblad's proprietary tethered software, which is Focus. It's called Focus. And we change the mode in here from single to multi. So this is the first example. And I'm going to take the same shot again now, and you'll see the camera will automatically take 4 shots because the sensor is now programmed to move, because basically on a standard sensor with the RGB photo sites, we have predominantly green, blue, green, blue, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, blue. So there's more greens than there are reds and blues. And what happens is that the sensor can move the sensor along to reposition a red pixel where a green was, or a blue where a green was, to give us true RGB values at a specific point. And that in turn increases image quality. It benefits us in a number of ways to do with clarity, sharpness, tonal range, color fidelity. Also, I find it gives you one stop extra latitude, if you like, on depth of field. So whereas you might have got diffraction at f16 and you wouldn't have chose to use f16, when you move into the multi-shot mode, because the image quality improves, you can get away with that one extra stop of depth of field that you might not have chosen to use because of diffraction. Anyway, let's get into it. So we've done the single shot. I've now set it into multi-mode. Press the button. It shoots 1, 2, 3, 4. It then combines the image file, interpolates that all together. It says 4 in the corner there, so we know that's the 4-shot mode. Let's look at the image quality. So I'm just going to jump back to the single shot mode, zoom in there, and let's go into 200% on that one. Remember, we were there. So that was the image quality we were getting on a single shot mode. Let's look at that now with the multi-shot 4 mode. The clarity is much, much greater. It's still a 100 megapixel file in that particular mode, but it just improves that image quality. Now, if we move into the 6-shot mode, then it changes things again, because not only does it move the photo sites or the pixels to give you more clear RGB data, but it also moves them again to give you increased resolution. So the file will go from being a 100 megapixel file to being a 400 megapixel file. And it requires it to shoot 6 shots to do that. So let's just take that series of shots, just press the button, it does it for you. Now I'm using Broncolor lighting here for consistent exposure results on every flash, because multi-shot photography does not work well without consistent exposures. And automatically number 6, and then it's going to interpolate all of those or combine all of those shots together to give us a 6-shot file. And here is the 6-shot file now. And if I zoom in now, look at the amazing detail we've got there. We are now at 100% on the 6-shot file, but look how much more magnified it is. Because previously, if we look at the image data here, previously on the single shot file, 100 megapixel is giving us a file size of 11,656 pixels wide, which is massive, of course. So nearly 12,000 pixels wide. But on the new 400 megapixel shot, using the multi-shot feature, it is now 23,312 pixels wide. So this is like taking a 100 megapixel image, adding another one here, adding another one here, adding another one here. You've got 4 times the area essentially from this pixel shifting, moving the sensor. So we have 2 options available to us with this firmware update. One, a huge increase in resolution, which can be really useful for institutions, museums, art galleries where they're photographing artifacts or art and they need that super, super high detail, and it's a still life setup like this. Or we've got an improved image quality even on the 100 megapixel with the 4-shot mode, so that people like me for product photography, or potentially where you need really, really high detail like jewelry, watches, that sort of thing, you can get even more meticulous detail out of the camera with this new firmware upgrade. Now, for those of you that are interested in motorcycle photography, I just want to quickly show you this. So I took this shot of my Aprilia RS660, and that shot was done with just 1 light only. I did that on a 3-minute long exposure in the dark by moving around the scene, the reflector panels, and directly lighting the motorcycle in key places with different modifiers, all during a 3-minute exposure in the dark, and then also just turn the headlights on for part of it as well. And that resulted in that shot there. If you'd like to see how that was done with 1 studio light in a 3-minute long exposure, you can check that out on visualeducation.com.